Spain remains Catholic. And it's going to fight to control the Vatican. And this, okay, so that's what Spain does. Now, Britain and the Dutch need to differentiate themselves from Spain. And so they become Protestant, or what we call Calvinist. Okay? So Catholic is really about obeying authority. But the Protestant, the Calvinist religion insists on hard work, on energy, on obtaining wealth. Okay? The problem, though, is that the Spanish are too powerful. And the French, some of them are Calvinist, but most are Catholic. Okay? So what's going to happen is that the English and the Dutch are going to decide to join forces. Okay? So I want to very quickly show you the difference between the Catholic religion and the Protestant religion. Okay? So these are the Spanish. And as you can see, there's a lot of trade going between the New World and Spain. Why is this the case? Because Spain is extracting resources from the New World, primarily silver. Okay? The French are also engaged in trade as well. So what they really want is fur from North America. So fur is considered a luxury at that time. But as you can see from this map, the people that are really engaged in trade, engaged in piracy, in trade, in shipping, are the British, okay, and the Dutch. And the reason why is that they're poor, okay? And so through this hard work, they become very wealthy very quickly. In fact, the Dutch, become the wealthiest nation in the world per capita. You have this burgeoning of the middle class. And so what happens now is that the Spanish and the Dutch come into conflict. Because remember, the Dutch are a colony of the Spanish. And so the Spaniards want the Dutch to pay more taxes, and the Dutch want to be more independent. So this starts a series of wars, okay? In fact, an entire series of wars starts throughout Europe called the 30 Years' War. Okay? So ostensibly, it's a religious conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics, but there are lots of there are other underlying factors as well. Okay? Another factor is the Spaniards want to exert control over the Dutch. Okay? And so there's lots of different reasons, but the main thing you need to know is that millions and millions of people die. In fact, it is the deadliest war in Europe right before, up until the World War I. Okay? And so this creates anxiety in Europe, because if there's all this war and you're generating all this wealth, how do you keep this wealth secure, right? You're a merchant, you became very wealthy through trade by going to the East Indies and getting spices and come back to Europe and selling them. But if the Spanish or the French are going to send an army and steal everything, how do you keep your gold safe? Okay? So what's going to happen is this. What's going to happen is that the British and the Dutch are going to decide to get married. Okay? This is what we call the Glorious Revolution. 1688 Glorious Revolution. So let's talk about the Glorious Revolution. In the Glorious Revolution, what happens is that the British nobility invite William of Orange, who is a leader of the Dutch Republic, to come and become the monarch of Britain. Okay? And so you're like, okay, why would they do that? Why would they betray their own king, James II, and install a foreign monarch, William of Orange? Okay? And so the thing you need to understand is that throughout British history, what makes Britain unique is that the monarch has always been in conflict with the nobility. Okay? The king has always been in conflict with the oligarchs. And this is a continuous pattern. So ostensibly, the reason is religious because James II was Catholic and Britain is a Protestant country. But the real reason is the nobility want to exert authority over the country, okay? So in this agreement, what would happen is that Parliament becomes the sovereign state, okay? It becomes the de facto power in England. And the king, William Orange, agrees to be the puppet or the figurehead, but the real power is in Parliament. And so this creates the idea of national sovereignty. Okay? What people don't appreciate is that the real reason why they want to do that is they want to protect capital. Okay? Capital. Okay, or transnational. So the idea is that not only does William Orange come over, but most of Dutch wealth come over. Because remember, at this time, the Dutch have a huge problem. They're constantly being invaded by Spain. So what you do is you take all the gold in the Dutch Republic and you transfer over it to England, okay? And so in 1694, they create something called a Bank of England. All right? And the Bank of England, the idea is this. The idea is that if you buy the Bank of England, that gold is yours, okay? But the Bank of England will always be guaranteed by Parliament. All right, so this is a very important idea, guys. I need you to understand this for the rest of the semester, okay? So before, if you're a king and you need to go fight a war, you would borrow money from bankers and merchants, right? The problem, though, is that, one, you could lose the war, in which case, oops. Second is that you could die, in which case, oops. And the third problem is that you could just say, I'm king, I'm not going to give you back your money, okay? And so these merchants would have no choice but to try to create a revolution, okay? But as a merchant, as a capitalist, you don't want to go through this process. And so the Bank of England, it's really important because now you are lending money not to the king, but to the nation. Okay? What this means is that the nation has to pay you back. So even though the king dies, the people are liable for the debt. Okay, does that make sense? All right? So now, if you're a merchant, you feel safe. I can now put my money in the Bank of England. It's my money. If I lend it to the nation, I'm always guaranteed that they'll pay me back. Okay? And England is safe because, unlike the Dutch Republic, England is an island, and therefore it's protected by the Royal Navy. It's impossible for the French, the Habsburg Empire, or the Spanish to invade England. They're never able to conquer England, and so it makes England safe, okay? All right? So now the question is, why would the Dutch, why would they put their money in England? Because remember, at this time, they can screw you over, okay? So the way around this is you have some old techniques. You have intermarriage, right? And then you have religion, or what we call secret societies. Because remember, both the Dutch Republic and England are Calvinists, okay? And the major secret society that facilitated trade, of course, were the Freemasons. But during this time, these two were really between aristocrats. And the Bank of England was trying to get as much money as possible, right? So what they started to develop was a new concept. It's not a new concept, but they really systemized it. It's called contract law. All right, so there's a famous British philosopher named John Locke. And he said that what is government for? Government provides the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. All right? What that means is a government ensures you three rights. We will protect your safety, We'll make sure you won't die. Okay? We will make sure you have the right to do whatever you want, liberty, and also we will protect your private property. Okay? The entire purpose of Parliament and the courts, okay, the judicial system, is to ensure that your private property is protected, no matter where your private property came from. Okay? Doesn't matter, they don't care what the origin of private property is, okay? So like if you're French and you killed 1 million people to steal 1 million gold, they don't care. It's yours, it's private, okay? If it's, and they believe that this private property comes from God. All right? This is yours because God willed it to be yours, and we, England, must protect it. And they will do so through Parliament and through the court system. Okay? Does that make sense? So now, if you're wealthy in Europe, you're now encouraged to go invest in England. Okay? And this creates a concept that today we call offshore financial center, or OFC. Okay, so think of like Dubai or Hong Kong, where they don't care where the money comes from. Okay? Their legal system, the financial system will help protect this money. Okay? Also Switzerland. Okay, so Switzerland is a classic example. But England create this, and they base their entire nation around this idea.